according to the abandonment procedures, if any party can prove damages, that the system cannot be abandoned, is that correct?
Correct. And I think what we talked about here is, like Gene said, probably having the hearing, closing the hearing, taking it under advisement, and essentially tabling it and trying to see whether or not the FDR project does come to fruition.
And I think that was the first part of this step in order to meet the needs you're talking and Patty would have here too.
Well, I think we'd all like to establish what the minimum water level is going to be and what the maximum is. With the least amount of impact, of course, on the higher level to the county, roads, and to the surrounding communities.
Can you state your name too, please, ma'am?
Patty Olson.
Okay, and I think maybe the one thing we want to is this is our first step in order to get to the next step we do with the flood damage reduction. So like Gene was saying, if we table this with the conjunction of it, Earl?
Could we just abandon, make a motion to abandon it, but put the stipulation on there only if this project goes forward?
I think that should be a concern of all parties in that area.
Let's see what legal, Bill, right?
Yeah, I would say not, because if you're making that motion contingent on this other one, we don't know what that other one's going to be until you go through the hearing process. So I think you'd be better off tabling it, and then if you have an FDR project that goes through the hearing process and the board actually adopts it, now I think you have a reason for abandonment because you can't necessarily have the two existing together.
And I think we've got the concerns of county and the landowner here addressed, and I mean, we'd still be able to continue to address these things with it being tabled.
Do we have to have a motion before we can table it?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, we would have to, when we're done with our discussion with that.
I move that we accept it.
Just hold tight, we're not quite done with if anybody else wants to speak.
I guess I have a question. So this process has already taken some time since that last culvert, at least on East Four-Legged Lake, was raised by another 4 feet. So in the interim of all this happening, I mean, how much longer are we looking at? Are we looking at a year? Because in the meantime, nothing is being done to change the elevations of those culverts as they exist today.
Well, at the rate we move forward with all the agencies and whatnot, we could very easily see that it could be a year with, it's just hard to say, but this is the first piece we need to get to in order to get
So what's the elevation of East Four-Legged based on the culvert height now?
Well, right now, there are beaver dams that are holding the lake that affects your property probably 2 feet higher than it should be.
Right.
So that's one issue, is there's a maintenance issue as we speak that should probably be addressed, because the eastern lakes are 2 feet higher than the western basins.
On July 16th, it was 1429.1, but we got beaver dam in the culvert and beaver dam in the ditch downstream causing that.
And I believe in 2009 it was even higher than that when we had the water issues.
I believe it was, yeah. It's actually flooded out the township road before because of beaver blocking the ditch.
Gene, your question?
What would it be without the beaver dams? What is that right at?
It is at,
Well, it'd be at AB 1427, that's the ultimate control.
That would be acceptable.
Well, it's my understanding it's 7 feet higher than it was when it was established legal in 1921, correct?
Yeah, it was, the inlet was about 1421 back 95 years ago.
At this point, I can't access some of the land that I own because of the water issues.
How much maintenance is
Right
required
now.
to put into this dam as far as from the county's point of view?
the beaver dams in our Carlo 23 and that railroad grade culvert was a pain for many years. We put a lot of money into that. The outlet where the township road was, we used to always maintain that and tear out beaver dams, I'd say 2-3 times a year. Our Car Road 2, we ended up having a riprap, and we probably put over $50,000 into that because the water was high.
Okay.
I can speak a little bit for Patty about the culvert at the railroad grade. It was removed.
Just for the record, are we talking about?
Yeah, up there. Yeah. That culvert. Yeah, right there. That's the one Patty's concerned about. I don't know what date it got removed from the original elevation, but Earl Ehlers removed it. It was a concrete pipe at the time. He removed it in the about 2000 time frame.
It It was during that excessive wet year because it was flooding.
Yeah,
Renner's property, it was flooding my property, it was filling up his mother's basement full of water, it was going over the county road. It was causing damages.
Township Road.
And obviously he got frustrated and was getting no resolve by anybody for help to get the water out of there, and it couldn't, between the beaver dams and the elevation of the pipes, it flooded on our land versus.
So
Wouldn't have happened if the pipe would have been where it should have been to begin with.
So the pipe got removed, we still had water problems, because it was plugging up our County Road 23, then there's a little ditch right there. And we hired Frank Deerdahl to clean that out.
And that actually, am I correct in that is actually part of the legal drainage system?
Yes, it is. So we didn't know it was a legal drainage system at the time, you guys were never there to inspect it or do anything, so.
Well, maybe nobody knew whose it was.
But we ended up putting that culvert back into railroad grade, and I put it back in at the elevation that the concrete culvert was before we moved up. We didn't know it was a legal ditch system at the time, and I got old survey records from the 1980s when we rebuilt County Road 23 that had that elevation of that railroad grade culvert. So what we put back in is a steel pipe at the same elevation, if not slightly lower, than what it was in the 1980s, so.
Which was already higher than what the legal ditch system
Right.
was supposed to be.
When we dug out to put the pipe in, we did see a wood structure below it. It kind of looked like a remnants of wood box cover. You ever seen one of those before? And so it was obviously there was culvert buried below that.
And you just put it on top of
We
that?
put it on top to match the elevation of the 1980s, to keep the DNR happy and all that.
Well, I think we're kind of getting to this, and we do have a petition here that's warranted of the percentages. This is why we have the hearing process, to go through to hear the comments. Are there any other comments? Otherwise, we'll close the hearing and we'll turn it over to the board to see what direction. Yeah.
And just for clarification purposes, you're stating that Clearwater County would not object to it if there was adequate or an FDR project that you guys would approve of?
Yeah, to that effect, I do, in my letter, you can read the parameters that we are willing to accept as a flood reduction project. Personal opinion, put back to 1423.8 to what it was in the 90s. I think you could just do that for motion, be done with it. But
There was a fair amount of opposition right now.
yeah, there is. Now that's from the road point. Now, with that said, the county board wants to accept what the landowner wants, which is higher water. So part of my operating plan is allow me to drain down to that 1423.8 for maintenance purposes. It may only happen once every 20 years.
Right, and part of our role here too is we're trying to obtain flood damage reduction.
Yep.
You know, whether the board, the watershed goes forward with it, with or without the permission of the county, I mean, we're looking into all the options with that, you know.
Yeah. And anything above that, in my opinion, damages the roads to some extent. County board's okay with some damage to the roads. So we're willing to accept a normal pool at 14.27.0, which is lower than it is today. And actually, there's a picture in my map which shows it pretty close to that, because the water's down this year. I think it's the last page. Just there. That's from County Road 2 that just shows the water level. We're willing to accept that water level at County Road 2, West Warlake Lake, and I believe that's what the landowners want.
Okay,
So, you know, you'd have a long range for that flood reduction from that 1423.8 to that 1427. On very short periods of time, we're willing to go up to 1429 on our road.
there's a certain amount of the landowners that have spoken though, whether you say 57 or 67%. So I mean, when you say the landowners, I mean, this is, the reason we're here is because of the percentage that they petitioned to abandon it, you know, in conjunction with our flood damage reduction.
Yeah, some want to see the water, you know, so they can look at it. Some just don't want to pay into a system where they can't farm anymore.
Right.
So I think that's half of it.
Okay,
So,
any other comments, Dan?
no, that'll be it.
I think a lot of the landowners aren't understanding of the whole thing either. You know, they're quick to say, okay, we want more water because it looks nice, or Mennonites have it in their mind that there's more water there, that they're gonna have water to irrigate, the products that they're growing. But since each individual lake is so different, the impact to the property and my surrounding neighbors, because we're low, the impact there is a lot more abundant than what it's gonna be on West Four-Legged Lake.
But, I mean, they got a role when they sign this, a certain responsibility, whether or not we know they're educated on it or not, they signed this for a reason, For us to say that they don't know that, well, we don't know that.
Well, I don't know how a lot of them can know when they haven't been
But I can't
present.
take your word, Patty, for what somebody has signed here, feeling that they know full well the abandonment procedure, so.
But I think they all have concerns that there will be something to replace that. With a workable minimum and a workable maximum. And
I think that's the process we're doing here today by having this hearing and getting the county's concerns. And a lot of these concerns that we have ourselves here as far as the process of the abandonment to the flood damage reduction in conjunction. Like what Gene said, if we end up going forward with it with this table until we have these other mechanisms in place, it's part of the process.
I believe it's a workable project.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that this is very healthy, I said, to get this out so we know what concerns we're addressing here.
I'm on the FDR project team too, and it's hard to get any specific numbers. That's why I put mine in the letter. And believe it or not, I think my thinking is the same as the DNR or close to it. And I think we're all thinking close to the same. They want 1426 for a high. Well, that's below what I can live with. And that's even better. The lower the better for me.
And that's part of the process that we're going through with the flood damage reduction team, and
Yeah.
It looks like this could be a win-win all the way around.
Yep, right.
I was confident with this project just because of the fact that how many people have eyes on this project.
Right.
Makes me more comfortable as a landowner because everybody has their own interests, so they should be able to reach a compromise.
I would surely think that on a project of this size, that we should be able to come to some conclusion or move forward with this without there being a lot of, there's got to be some compromise, I would think, on this thing that we can get through without too much complications.
Well, I believe the landowners agree it's not working the way it is right now.
Yep.
I think we've come a long way already.
Okay. Any other comments?
Can you get that beaver dam where I pointed on the map?
If that is on the legal drainage system,
Yes,
yes.
And
Yes.
from now
Let us know when
on,
it's done so we can get the beaver dam on the culvert.
then from now on, when you see situations